Yes. Not long after taking up this post you were. This was just after the Americans had launched Vigilant Resolve and subsequently withdrawn from Fallujah. What was your frank assessment about concerns about the tactics being used by the Americans at this time?
My frank assessment?
Yes, or the UK assessments.
I think that it's such a vast subject. It's quite hard to know where to start, really. By that time, so we were talking middle of 2004, I think the US were recognizing, arguably belatedly, that the generation of Iraqi capability was going to be the key to reach a satisfactory conclusion inside Iraq. I think that things like the operations in Fallujah were an understandable reaction to events that had happened, and interestingly, the subsequent operation in Fallujah in the autumn, as I recall, I can't remember what the code name was a much more judged, although it was still quite violent, it was a much more judged intervention and much more carefully prepared. The impression I got from the Americans was that they would sometimes make mistakes. I think we made mistakes as well, but the Americans are very, very good at learning lessons, as it were, in theatre. They know that things went wrong there. They had adopted an approach in the first Fallujah, and learned the lessons from that. The other thing I would say is that we weren't separated from them. We were an integral part of this coalition. We had the deputy commander, who would be in command if the commander was away. We had deputies all the way down the line. So we had, plenty of opportunity to make our points. So although there are elements of the US operation, the military level, which could be open to criticism, I think we were implicated in that. I think the things that I felt the US didn't quite get right to start with was again they very much focused, in terms of building Iraqi capability, on generating battalions, generating the army, which we needed to do, and perhaps not enough attention was paid to the ministries, to the higher command structures and so on and so forth. One of the things that was awkward was that the program of assistance in the Ministry of Defense, the Iraqi Ministry of Defense, was run by the State Department, I think, whereas the assistance to the army was run through what became M.N.S.T. CIA, Multinational, whatever M.N.S.T. CIA is.
We have heard the acronym.
One of the sensible things that the US commander did was actually bring this together. We put it all into N.S.T.CIA, and that was the right thing to do, and I think a good illustration of how the US learned some lessons from that. So we had a more integrated process of building up Iraqi capacity, though it was much more difficult on the Ministry of the Interior side. But that wasn't necessarily the fault of American tactics or strategy.
You had this period of, I'm thinking of it in terms of April 2004, the low point, with the Fallujah address uprising and so on. Did you sense concern around the Ministry of Defense that we had got ourselves attached to an American operation that risked going in completely the wrong direction?
Not going completely in the wrong direction. I think that there was concern that we were associated with an operation where things had happened which looked very bad. Abu Ghraib was a very good example, and of course that generated a whole set of accusations about British abuse of prisoners. That was a big issue that I had to deal with during 2004, but I never felt that I or anyone else felt we were hit to something where the strategy was completely wrong. The broad strategy actually was pretty consistently in two parts of supporting the Iraqis in containing and suppressing insurgency, while building Iraqi governance and capacity. Those were the thrusts, and they always remain the same thrust.